I am here today with my friend Brian, and
Hey, what's up?
I did not ask last time for this, but I'm going to ask for this time. Where can they find you, by the way?
I'm on Twitter at Bombastic ENT, Instagram Bombastic Entertainment. If you type Bombastic Entertainment into YouTube, that's my YouTube channel. I make short films, interactive adventures, fake movie trailers, all kinds of stuff.
He's a pretty creative guy. Check him out if you guys get a chance, for sure.
Yeah, filmmaker by day, video game snob by night.
Excellent. Well, so the elephant in the room, the news I think broke Friday. Nintendo broke their year and a half long silence about what the hell's been going on with Metroid Prime 4. When I did not see anything by Game Awards last year in December of 2018, I was starting to get a little bit confused. I was like, shit, they're going to cancel it maybe, or maybe, they've run into problems. Even though Reggie here and there was like, oh yeah, things are going fine. Like every once in a while when pressed about it extra hard, he would break and say, it's being worked on, things are going according to plan. We don't have any updates right now. Really kind of just brushing it off. But I think maybe behind those words, he must have been secretly thinking to himself, dude, what the hell is this development team doing?
I don't want to derail this too much. I just wanted to say, since we're talking about Reggie, he is one of the most frustrating people to listen to because he is so unflappable. Like he's so impossible to take off message. Like it's really a marvel. Like if you know anything about being a corporate mouthpiece for something, but it's really impressive. Like his ability to like stay on message, and like I've never seen that guy really get tripped up.
No, there's a reason why he's been the front man for NOA as long as he has.
Yeah, right.
And I don't ever see that changing anytime soon. He's still a pretty young guy considering too. Uh,
Hmm.
but anyways, the Nintendo suits, whenever pressed about information about Metroid, they kind of deflected the question. They kind of downbeat that, if you will, if you're a fan of Super Smash Brothers as Fox, that question, and would change subject pretty quickly. But recently, they finally broke news about what's been going on with Metroid Prime 4, and the whole, you can find the whole post online. I know Game Informer and IGN have both posted stories about it. There's videos on YouTube about it as well, other than this one. But the main focus is that they didn't like how the game was going, and they decided to hand the project back to the original developer, Retro Studios, which we'll talk about that more in depth here in a minute. And they're scrapping what they have so far, from my understanding, and they're starting from square one, which means at the very earliest, most likely Metroid is now again 2 years out. Uh,
Well,
while
the director is working with Retro Studios now, so
yeah.
I don't know if they're completely scrapping it from a design standpoint.
Oh, they're working with. I must have misdigested the information. I thought they were handing the game to Retro.
Yeah, no, like they are Retro's taking over production, but the director is working in tandem with Retro Studios.
So it's still the same director
Is as of right now, I
as of
believe it
right
is. Yeah.
now. Well, I mean, shit, that might could change too. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know who really directed the stuff in the past, so I can't really speak for this guy's aptitude with these types of things. But I know when Nintendo originally broke the story that it wasn't going to be Retro developing the game in the first place, they said the people who are going to be making this game have worked on like roguelikes in the past, and have worked on like stuff like stuff that kind of have the spirit of Metroid, but they aren't Metroid, if that makes any sense. Kind of like Metroidvania style titles or stuff like that. That's what I heard.
Hmm.
I think that them giving it back to the people who basically made the Prime series what it is not a bad idea at all. That being said, I'm just as disappointed as anybody else that the next Metroid game is 2 years out at least now, if not more. And it's kind of a double-edged sword here. It is a cloud, but it's got a silver lining at least.
Yeah, I mean, Retro's a big machine too. Like they've got a lot of people working there. They what have they been working on? They've been cranking out Mario Kart, haven't they?
That they've been doing. I think they've been doing Donkey Kong titles primarily. That's been their main squeeze for the longest time, and I think that's one of the reasons why Nintendo was looking to move Metroid to a different studio, is because they
Just
want Retro to be able to pump out more Donkey Kong quickly because people like Donkey Kong. And
and Mario
I used to
Kart.
joke, yeah, I used to joke around a lot with people saying that Nintendo hates Metroid, but I'm so happy to say right now that I'm eating those words so hard, um, with
Well,
what they've decided to
it
do with
seems
this
like
title.
they're
Because if they truly didn't care, they would have just pushed this out, and it would have been shitty. Um,
right, and this announcement seems like them walking the walk because, like Miyamoto said at one point in time, that a delayed game is eventually good, but
a
a
bad
a,
game is bad
a
forever.
bad game is just always bad. So it's definitely them like walking the walk as far as that goes, and giving it back to Retro is a nice acknowledgement of that because that's what the fans wanted, and it seems like they definitely don't want another Metroid Other M situation where
Situation,
like
no. I mean, yeah. Well,
like
by not giving it to Team Ninja, there's no way they could fuck it up that bad. Let's be real. But
yeah, the game itself
was just fine in my
oh
opinion. The
yeah, it was
playability of the game
okay,
was
but it
fine. It
was
was
like
the
all the
story that really
presentation.
kicked me in the nuts.
It was all the presentation, the really bizarre design choices, like giving you every weapon but locking it superfluously for no reason.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
that's I mean,
so we're
I
avoiding
still
other
have
M.
yeah fond memories of playing the game the first time I played it through, and I every once in a while will think about revisiting it. But the amount of draw I get to revisit that game is not as strong as it is with the Prime trilogy or games like Super Metroid or Fusion or Zero Mission. But
Yeah, those games are very replayable. I think Zero Mission is my most replayed out of the two GBA games. Super Metroid is my number one, which it's just been around the longest.
longest, yeah,
Um, but it's amazing though, like as a series, like the ideas that Super Metroid introduced over the original Metroid,
is
how
what
little
really
has changed. Like,
defines what Metroid is more so than the original. I would argue.
y-
When you think of classic Metroid games, more people think about Super Metroid than they think about original Metroid. And because it's not that original Metroid was an inherently bad game. I mean it's fine. It's one of the all time greats for the NES. But its successor just took everything it did right, ran with it, and then made it so much better. So that while the first one still has a place in a lot of kids' hearts, or I should say, grown kids' hearts now, the successor to it is what when you think of Metroid, you think of Super Metroid, you think of you think of going through Brinstar, going through going running into all the enemies that you ran into in Super Metroid, finding that charge power up that lets you blast through walls and like jump and
yeah,
blast through ceilings and stuff. Game breaking stuff, sequence breaking. That's what Metroid was. Metroid was like get lost in this labyrinth, just explore and be completely immersed in your environment. Don't care about where you're going or how fast you get there. Just enjoy where you're at and find cool shit while you're doing it. That's the spirit of Metroid, and that's why people like. I mean that also too is why people like modern Zelda games, in my opinion, is because it has that very same sort of feel. Metroid and Zelda, there's a lot of similarities. I harp on Zelda a lot,
a lot of overlap.
but basically Metroid is Zelda with a gun, or Legend of Zelda, but it's a shooter, and there. But I mean it's basically goes down to I guess picking one over the other. This is getting super off topic here. Sorry. Picking one over the other for me I guess is more of I'm more into the sci-fi than I am into the lords and ladies, knights in shining armor sort of deal. But
I am not a fan of medieval stuff at all, but I love me some Zelda. There's just it's like the greatest feeling in the world to like solve that puzzle.
that's been
Yeah.
plaguing you forever. Yeah, no, I
And
get
it
that too. Because when I played the Ice
and it's
Temple,
always something deceptively simple.
playing the Ice Temple in I harp on Zelda a shit ton. I'm not even gonna lie. But I gotta be honest. One of my best experiences in video games, actually, even though I had to have a damn guide in front of me the entire time I played it, was playing Twilight Princess. It's in my opinion, I like Twilight Princess more than more than a lot of other Zelda titles, but I think it's because it's the first one I actually really sat down and was like got serious about actually trying to like beat or like figure out how Zelda actually worked. And there's some really enraging parts of that game for me. But
There's
I've
some
never
really enraging parts, and the kind of iterated on the most frustrating qualities of that going forward, and that's why Breath of the Wild was such a
Breath of Fresh Air.
Huh?
Legend of Zelda, Breath of Fresh Air.
Because like the fluff wasn't there in the same way, like all the frustrating progression blocking stuff, like getting the tears. Was it tears in that game?
Yeah, I think so.
You had to fill up the gems to,
and then make it to push away the evil night time and be in the day. Yeah, that sounds about right. Or you didn't have to know to teleport it to change into a wolf to walk up to a rock to teleport the rock somewhere else. Or no, you can't you had to do it as a human, but you couldn't teleport as a human, so you don't think you can teleport stuff. You walk around like aimlessly for hours looking to see how you can melt this lake, and it's this big ass rock. Like that's the answer, and it doesn't make any sense. Like I've never run into shit like that in Metroid. I've been stuck in Metroid before in the Prime series, but the longest I think I've ever been stuck at something in Metroid Prime is like maybe 30 to 45 minutes trying to figure out something, and I didn't have to go online to look it up. Whereas Zelda, I've been stuck on something for like 3 hours before I'm finally like, fuck it, what do I do? And I just go on the internet.
Yeah, and with Metroid, it was a little more simplified because the solution is usually to blast it. It's just a question of like, what do you have to blast?
Exactly. I'm a Cro-Magnon too. I don't like to think too much sometimes when I play video games.
Which isn't to say Metroid doesn't make you think, but like that's one of the things that made Super Metroid so much more accessible over the original Metroid was like just having that map screen. Like you would get stuck and you could always look at that and be like, okay, which corner of the map haven't I looked at yet?
Or what looks deceptively empty. And you could find missile expansions or, the next step of the game, like where the next power-up was going to be or the next boss. I liked stuff like that too. And I guess the sad news being that the game is I guess we should talk about the good and bad and ugly with this delay then. The good news I think we've kind of already touched on is that it's going to be it's in better hands now. Less of a chance for it to fail. The bad news kind of comes from the fans though.
Less of a chance to wind up with another Other M situation.
Yeah. I feel like this game is really going to make or break Prime, to be honest. If you look at how long it's been since Metroid Prime 3, that game released in the
2007.
The fall of 2007. That was Nintendo's Christmas game for the Wii, the year after the Wii came out.
It was like the golden age of Metroid. We had 3 games in in 4 years?
Yeah,
4 or 5 years.
Because we had Prime was shortly after the launch of the GameCube. We had Echoes, which I believe came in 2004, 2005. And then we had Corruption, which came in 2007. And then we had 3 Years of Nothing. And then we had Other M, which angered everybody. And then we had 6 Years of Nothing. And then we got Federation Force, which again angered people. And then the next year we got Samus Returns, which was when Metroid fans started to be like, oh, there's hope. We're not dead in the water yet. But still, that was 10 years. If you count, I count Other M as a passable title. But still, for fans of Metroid's not dead. For fans of Prime, you might be in trouble. If this game tanks, I don't see there being another Prime, to be honest. Because you look
I don't see them being separate fans.
No, but I know people who like classic Metroid but hate Prime, and that has always perplexed the shit out of me.
What?
But I know. I know people who don't. Well, it's people who prefer like side-scrolling stuff over 3D environment immersive stuff. Not to say that 2D can't be immersive, but I mean to me it's great. It's immersive, but some people don't. I guess some people don't feel that way, and the fact that I know that people don't really want. Some people just want the Metroid to go back to the way it was, and they'd rather have more classic style side-scroller Metroid like what we got with Super, with Fusion Zero Suit or Zero Mission, and Samus Returns. They want stuff like that more so than another 3D Prime experience.
But that was
Actually, more than three
like,
games in the span of time, because we're completely forgetting about Metroid Prime Hunters. We had 4 games in the span of like 6 years or so.
Yeah, I didn't play Hunters.
That kills me every time you say that. if do you still have your original? Well, it doesn't matter because you have a 3DS. I know. So if you should track down that game. I honestly, if you're a fan of Metroid, you should track down that game and just play through it once. It'll tide you over for a little while you wait for Prime 4. It's not bad, and I think it takes place during the events of between the events of 1 and 2.
Right, because weren't some of those characters in Prime 3?
No, but it was after we established that there was more than Samus as a bounty hunter. So it might have been.
Oh hell yeah! I'm looking at it on eBay right now. It's like $12
for cartridge alone. Yeah, you should do it, dude. It's so good. I'm thinking about finishing out my Metroid collection and buying the 2 games I don't have: Metroid Samus Returns on the original Game Boy and Metroid Prime Pinball. Because I don't have that. But
what did that come out for? Was that a
original DS as well?
Game?
Original DS. But
what a weird mashup.
You know what? It was back when Nintendo thought Metroid was cool again, and I really want that second coming of that era. And as somebody who likes a lot of traditional Nintendo series, I know I have no right to bitch about how bad things have been for Metroid recently. When I stand myself up next to F-Zero fans, I understand that you guys have it way worse than I do. Believe me, I get it. Since the GameCube, that's freaking rough, dude. But the fact that
that's some determination too. What have they had? 2 games in the entire series?
3.
I remember
N64 one was really good actually.
When Prime came out, because like during the N64 era, you had Mario 64, you had Ocarina of Time, which were not only good 3D
games, they were arguably the best ones out. Period at the time.
They were like genre defining. Like not only had nobody ever done this before, you took something old, brought it into 3D,
and did it really well.
And everyone was saying like, "Where's Metroid? Where's Metroid?" And then when Metroid Prime finally came out on GameCube, I remember having the feeling like, okay, they probably couldn't have done this on N64.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of where I'm at. I would have loved to have seen another side-scrolling Metroid game on N64 instead of seeing Prime as early as I did on GameCube. That being said, had we seen a side-scrolling Metroid on N64, I am of the opinion that we never would have gotten a 3D Metroid game. Maybe. If they decided to permanently keep it 3D or permanently keep it 2D. Look at Donkey Kong. If you're looking for examples of people who have one 3D game and they never revisited it, and Donkey Kong 64 wasn't even that bad of a game. Like, where was the GameCube? Where was the GameCube?
Oh my God. I haven't played it, but I did start playing that recently. And the Donkey Kong rap is just like mind blowing.
Oh my God, dude! There's so many like mashups and like corruptions of that shit on YouTube. It's great.
I can only imagine. I'm finally in on the joke, on that particular joke now.
If you know the words, you can shoot yourself.
20 years later, the last horse crosses the finish line.
You know what they say? Better late than never.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if they would have done a 2D, because my impression at the time was that 2D was going away and everything had to be 3D.
Well,
And then it wasn't until people started doing the kind of hybrid games like Beautiful Joe that, um, people kind of realized, not people, but like, I think the thought was that the market could bear both. Because, you also had things like Mega Man 64 coming out, which were
yeah, I was
pretty
gonna bring up Mega Man
polarizing.
64. I was also gonna bring up though a Japanese exclusive release in terms of shooting in the 3D concept worlds polygons of N64. You had a game called Sin and Punishment that was a Japanese exclusive that got ported over here for the Wii actually through the Wii shop, which is closing in 4 days, by the way, everybody. So if you've got shit downloaded and no way to put it on your Wii because you don't have enough room, go out and buy an SD card and get your shit downloaded before the store closes forever.
Well, I'm glad I didn't delete the one game I bought digitally on Wii then.
There you go. You had a much easier thing to check than I did. I had to check. I want to say I had to check 17 pieces of software to make sure everything was running flawlessly before I called it okay and didn't freak out about it anymore. Also, if you're looking for space to download this too, and you don't have that many games, all of the Wii services have been discontinued. So like Netflix is done, Hulu is done, YouTube is done, Amazon Prime Video is done. All that stuff is not going to be up on the Wii anymore. So if you want to, delete those to make room for your stuff, I would urge you to do it because you're not going to be able to use those anyway. The internet browser is so old and out of date that it doesn't even work. You could probably delete that too if you really needed the space. I would honestly urge people to just get your stuff and make sure that it works. You can't buy anything anymore, so if you didn't spend your points, that's kind of on you at this point. But download what you did have so that you don't lose it forever. And this is why I personally am very big into physical media because of store closings like this. The last time we saw something of this magnitude would have been like when the original Xbox Live went off the air forever. And people lost if they didn't have their Halo maps downloaded to their original console, they couldn't get them. If they didn't have, Battlefront 2 content downloaded to your console, you couldn't get it. That's just, when online services terminate everything, any money that you have tied up in there, if you don't have it downloaded, then that's gone too. So that's always terrible to see. But, trying to get back onto the Metroid train here with seeing, the 2D and 3D, games, 3D in the terms of Mega Man Legends, aiming in that was kind of bad because that was kind of a port from I believe that came out on PlayStation before it came to the N64 if I'm not mistaken.
Right, because it was Mega Man Legends, and then when it
Yeah,
came to 64, it was Mega Man 64.
Because I know that during that era, Nintendo
Because
was
that's
the
what
only
we had
one
to
using
do.
cartridges. So anything that came out on N64 either got to us slightly later, or they had to be developing it from the get go for the N64 when they were developing it for other consoles because of just the architecture of the system was so different to the
Well,
PS1
and
and the
especially
Dreamcast.
games that used a lot of audio,
Yeah,
because I, I
because
I think Resident Evil 2 was kind of the same.
yeah,
Um,
anybody who's ever played a Tony Hawk game on PlayStation and has played a Tony Hawk game on N64 knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because the N64 version of Tony Hawk games only had like 52-second clips of songs because that's all they could fit, and then they'd just repeat for your 2-minute run.
yeah, whereas PlayStation had the full 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
The game still played fine though. I mean, the games ran fine on the N64. It was just the audio was the issue. That's the biggest thing that kills the N64 is its struggles with audio for me. And but I feel like Metroid, and that's another thing too that I think would have killed the spirit of Metroid too, because if you look at the audio of Metroid in the past, it's always had these very like moody tunes, very deep, sort of like ambient techno environment style music that really like puts you like it takes you into the world. I'm a huge fan of the music that's gone into the Metroid and Zelda games. They help set the mood of where you're at so well, arguably more so than almost any other games I've ever played.
Have you
And that would
have
have
you heard
definitely
of,
suffered on the N64.
have you heard of Metroid Metal?
Yes,
Okay.
and I love it.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty. God bless the internet.
I know, man. definitely
Yeah,
check out Metroid Metal if you haven't ever seen that. By the way, it's It'll bring a tear to your eye.
Yeah, all of your favorite Metroid tunes turned into heavy metal tracks, shredding heavy metal tracks.
For the headbanger in every gamer, there's some Metroid metal.
That's one of the cool things about like that old style music too, is like not only was it just like melody like crazy, but the actual music, it's really impressive to see people take stuff like that at the time you might have thought, it's just bleeps and bloops because it's a chip tune piece of music, but the actual musicianship that went into those themes and seeing people try and recreate that is really impressive, because like Metroid's very much that way. A lot of the Castlevania music is like that too.
Oh my god, Castlevania's got some great music.
Someone trying to shred like Bloody Tears or Wicked Child or something like that. Just melting the frets off their guitar.
And melting the faces of everybody who's around them.
Right. Yeah. Like, damn, this Nintendo was really slamming back in the day.
Well, and even some of the it's so off topic here. Even some of the Sega Genesis synth-tar music, dude. There was some pretty crazy stuff from Sonic, and I recently learned from a friend that Michael Jackson actually helped compose some of the music for Sonic 3. Believe it or not, and that's why a lot of the old Sonic tunes slap, is because they had like professional pop stars come in and like help make the music for it behind the scenes. Like,
that one's new to me.
Yeah. One of my friends has brought that to my attention, that Michael Jackson helped make Sonic music at one point in time. Not all of them. It was just a couple of games, but still, I mean, I urge you to look into that, honestly, if you wanna see more about it, because I just stayed very surface level with it because I was busy when he sent it to me, but I was kind of amazed to read that. I was like, what?
Yeah, I'll put it on the list.
But I feel like, so Nintendo had a problem with audio in its N64. So you wouldn't have had, I feel like that really would have hurt Metroid in terms of its immersiveness. I don't think any N64 Metroid game would have held up as well as, some of the other Metroids would have held up, because music being one of the issues, and how do you put that game into 3D on, I guess, as brittle of a system as the N64 in terms of what it could handle in terms of 3D rendering. But they could have surprised us. Who knows?
Well, supposedly they were working on a Metroid 64, but it was mentioned in an interview, but then it was just never heard from again. So
I'm guessing they ran into horrible problems
they held
with
that
it
back to create Metroid Prime.
Maybe there's some unfinished N64 Metroid game that never saw the light of day, just like Star Fox 2.
Oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing if the N64 Classic came out and they're like, by the way, here's Metroid 64.
Here's Metroid 64. Oh my God. You know how quickly I would shit my pants and run out to the store and not even change? Immediately. I would immediately poop my pants and just run out to the store, smelling terrible. I'd smell like a Melee player while I'm trying to buy my Nintendo 64 Classic.
I don't understand the reference, but I feel like that was a pretty... that must have been a knockout punch.
Yeah, there's a stigma in the fighting game community that people who play Super Smash Brothers, specifically Melee, always smell terrible, because a lot of people who would go to these tournaments aren't actually good. They're just weebs, and they don't shower or have good personal hygiene. And they usually pick Fire Emblem characters too. So I mean,
like Comic-Con.
Yeah, there you go. But nerdier and neckbeardier.
Okay.
Maybe. Oh man, I gotta not talk about neckbeards, man. I could get lost in that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, let's not do that.
Yeah, not on here.
So back to Metroid though. When did the GBA games come out though? That must have been during the Metroid Prime.
Yeah, because GBA, because handheld consoles have always been like almost a generation or two behind the current mainstay console. Like you had Game Boy Color was big during the N64 slash Game Boy Pocket, and then I'm sorry, OG Game Boy was Super Nintendo. Game Boy Color was to N64, and then because you had Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, they had like transfer pack stuff for the N64, and then you had the Game Boy Advanced leaking cable for the GameCube. Yeah, exactly. And DS and Wii, I think, actually had some wireless connectivity with each other for certain games, but I did not own any that utilized that function. However, when the Nintendo channel was still active, you could download demos to your DS and play them through the multiplayer download tool in the DS. You could download demos off the Wii. It would communicate to the DS. So I know that there was Wii and DS communication, and now 3DS and the Wii U with being able to play Smash Brothers with your 3DS as a controller on the Wii U.
Who would want to do that?
Actually, that was my primary source of control, Brian. And that was pretty damn good.
With the new one, or
no, dude, that was back with my Yoshi one. I did it with my Yoshi one, and I do it with my new one too, but not as much.
I mean with Smash Ultimate or with the.
No, this was with Smash for Wii U and 3DS. You'd have to have 3DS put in your.
That makes sense then. That makes sense then. I was gonna say, like, who's still holding the torch to play with the 3DS as a controller?
Oh no! I mean, I assimilated with the times. I now use the Pro controller.
Because it even seems like super antiquated, like with the PlayStation 4 using the Vita as a controller.
Yeah,
it's like you do it once just because for the novelty of it. Then you're just like, yeah, never again.
Yeah.
Not having those second two shoulder buttons is really crippling.
It's surprising how well, no, with the new 3DS, you have the second two shoulder buttons that you can use, and with a game like Smash, you could like designate one to be the shield button and one to be the grab button, and it works just fine. Because that's how the OG controllers did it.
I still haven't played with the GameCube controller. I bought the adapter for it, because it lets you use all of your Wii controllers.
Well, all
like
your
classic controller
GameCube controllers
for Switch.
Wait, how do you use Wii controllers on the Switch?
Well, because the adapter that I bought has the GameCube plug on the one end and the Wii plug / NES Super NES Classic plug on the other end.
Oh, right. So you're talking about like the Classic Controller Pro for like the Wii you could use on this. Okay, I got you.
Right.
I was thinking you were saying like you could use like Wii remotes with it, and I was like, what?
Because before we were rolling, I mentioned earlier about playing Smash with my niece and nephew.
Yeah.
And my nephew was being really obnoxious with like he realized he could press like the screen capture button and it would make a noise. So I gave him the Wii Classic controller so that he just had the buttons to play and couldn't do any of the home
fill up
functions.
Your system memory. Yeah, nice.
So pro tip, if any of your friends are being obnoxious, just give them a SNES Classic controller.
And watch as half of their moves go out the window. So for Metroid
or Wii Pro Classic.
For Metroid for Metroid though, going forward, we've skipped a lot of consoles with Metroid 2 in the past as well. NES got one, Game Boy got one. I don't think Game Boy Color got one. Super Nintendo got one. N64 did not get one. Game Boy Advance got two. GameCube got two. DS got 1.5 if you count Metroid Prime Pinball. I won't for the sake of argument, but they got one. They had two games that had the Metroid name in it, but they had one Metroid game. And then the Wii
Federation
got one.
Force 3DS.
3DS got one. The Wii U got skipped. And now we're at the Switch.
Well, arguably, didn't the Wii U have Metroid Prime Trilogy?
No, that's technically a Wii game that runs on the Wii.
Okay.
They sold it digitally for the Wii U, though, so you could download it and play it for the Wii U. But you still had to use, I believe you still had to use the Wii remote and nunchuck to play it. You could not use the gamepad. so I count that as a Wii game.
I, uh, yeah, that's totally fair. I don't see how you would update that in any satisfactory way.
Yeah. Other than the thing that we described earlier with putting the map screen on the gamepad, and then if they actually did that, I would probably buy the trilogy again for the Wii U. And recent rumors were going around saying that they were making a Metroid Prime trilogy for the Switch. But I haven't heard anything on that either, and that would have definitely have helped soften the blow of the news that we got that we're still quite a few years out from the next Metroid game. And I'm really hoping that this is the bad thing that I was trying to avoid talking about. I guess was that I'm hoping the hype doesn't kill this game, because Nintendo has been canning Lightning ever since they announced this game back in 2017. And it's everybody's, the longer they go without saying stuff, the more people, your imagination runs wild. The less you see, the more your imagination's allowed to run wild. And you have no idea what you're going to expect. And I'm terrified that we're going to get this behemoth of a game. And, thank God they didn't announce it before 2017 when they're, potentially restarting it in 2019. There's no way we're getting it this year. We might get it next year if we're lucky, but realistically, I'm expecting this game out in like 2021 spring or maybe even fall, at the absolute earliest. And that's a long time for hype to bend and twist things in our minds. And now that we know it's back with the original developers, we're gonna even hold it to an even higher standard than we were before. Because I feel like with changing developers earlier, people were willing to give it more of a kind of a grain of salt sort of issue, like or give it benefit of the doubt, like it's a new developer, give them a chance, kind of like what the Halo fans did with when things went to 343 from Bungie. But I don't really
It can't be that bad.
well.
I think it'd be fine because they kind of do that with stringing people along with the Zelda games. I mean, I know you mentioned Zelda hasn't really been your thing traditionally, but they got Twilight Princess between generations, and then it was kind of the same thing with the most recent one, Breath of the Wild. They strung people on for that entire
console generation of the Wii U, waiting for that game, and then
pretty much, and they were
put it out
teasing
for
it
Switch,
for 4
yeah.
years and spending 45 minutes of watching Miyamoto climb a tree and just
look at me play this game that you can't play.
yeah, right. So people went wild with that, and it wound up fine. Nintendo.
They generally deliver.
What I really appreciate about Nintendo as a developer is that they, how do I say this? Like they don't really put out bad stuff. Like all of their first party stuff is pretty flawless.
Yeah, or within a couple of updates ends up becoming flawless.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like about them, well, they used to have a no patch policy famously, and they kind of
Retconned that, yeah.
yeah, with the newer systems. But
I mean, why would you not, though? I mean, that just gives you the chance to let your audience be your play testers and then fix whatever thing they can find. Because when you release something out into the wild, with unlimited people playing it, basically, you're going to find glitches and bugs and game-breaking stuff a lot faster than if you have, a team of 20 test monkeys playing the game flawlessly day in and day out.
But I think that's the primary difference between Nintendo's internal development standards and then most other studios.
They have really good monkeys.
They have really good monkeys, and they don't typically announce things before they're 6 months to a year out of the gate.
So it helps kill the hype
really
before it builds.
Surprising with Metroid that they announced it but didn't show anything of it, and then a year and a half went by. It must have been like, okay, the game is pretty much done, and it's just this doesn't live up to our standards, so we're going to scrap it and do the other. Which,
to be honest, yeah. I mean, I'd be okay if they did scrap whatever they had and just start over with Retro, working with them from the ground up at square one. If
whatever it is going to play like butter.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna feel great. I hope. I really hope. I don't think Nintendo's gonna release a bad product after this. But all I have to say is, if this sort of thing happens again, where Retro gets to the end of it and they look at it and they're like, I don't know that this is what we want for Metroid Prime 4. Where does Nintendo go from there? What do they do? How do they tell the Metroid fan base, that news a second time? How would the fan base react to it? How would they take it? Like that's where I'm looking at. That's what I'm concerned with right now. Because while they're redoing it, the pressure is higher than it's ever been now for them to get it right. You know what I mean? Because they don't often pull games and just be like, this isn't good enough. We're reworking what we're doing with this. And not only just to do that, but to publicly announce that is why the game is delayed. Or that they haven't talked about it. Because keep in mind, they could have just done this and not said anything, because we didn't know what the hell was going on with Metroid Prime 4. They could have just kept radio silence until it was ready. They chose to break the silence. And that's why I'm scratching my head. It's cool that they're announcing that it's being made by Retro Studios, but was that worth breaking the silence to tell us?
I think it was, but that's kind of a cultural thing.
Early on.
It's less of a PR thing and more of a cultural thing too, because there's definitely the people are asking about this. We need to clear the air, but there's also the very Japanese thing of we got to go out here and fall on our sword to protect our honor.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And that's how that whole announcement kind of came off.
Play off, yeah. Same here.
But that only makes them look better as a company and more transparent.
Oh yeah, especially in Japan.
I like that they typically don't announce things 3 years in advance and then just drip feed us stuff.
No, I agree, because that's what builds hype for stuff, and then you get it and it's terrible, or it doesn't live up to what you want.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or you're not excited for the thing by the time it finally gets here.
Exactly. That's kind of how I was with Brawl when Brawl came out, because they were drip feeding us stuff forever, and it kept getting delayed and delayed. And same thing with Duke Nukem Forever, but we're not going to get into that right now. We just kept getting slight bits of information, and it started getting vaporware awards, stuff like that. And when it finally came out, Brawl was fine when it came out, because it was groundbreaking in terms of being able to fight people online for Super Smash Brothers. That was right when Nintendo jumped on the online train, and the roster was larger than it ever been. And plus, we started getting like weird characters like Snake and Sonic into the series. So that was like when Nintendo had really stepped into its own with the game, even though Brawl is like horrible if you go back and play it today, because they had terrible mechanics like tripping and like other like really wonky items that like kind of just were insane, and like really weird designs for stages. Like a lot of people didn't like Hanen Bow. I'm like in the vast minority of people who didn't mind it, but there were weird stages that people like you would play once and then you'd never want to play again.
Was Brawl the
one for the Wii? One? No, the GameCube one's Melee. That's the one that everybody thinks is God's gift to the world.
Okay, all right.
But
gotcha.
The
Ultimate was my first Smash ever.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the family. Your seat's not going to be at the head of the table, but it's definitely at the table. Ultimate's God. Ultimate's a great game. But back to the Metroid stuff. I feel like at this point in time, what do you? I want to know. I want to pick your brain on what does Nintendo do if they have to come out and announce again that things are not going according to plan. How do you fall on that sword twice?
I don't think they will. I don't think they will. I think they'll spin it into something, because there must have been a strong foundation there to begin with, which is why they went with the pitch of whatever studio they had handed it off to. But the craftsmanship of the people, of the technicians at that company, must not have been able to deliver on it. So that's probably where they're like, okay, we're not screwing around. We'll just go with Retro, because we know they're going to get a good product, and it's what the fans kind of were bitching about anyway. Like, why isn't Retro doing this?
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, crank out another Mario Kart, or,
You make it sound like Vince McMahon.
That's how I read internet comments, in that voice.
It just like throws everything in the back of his throat and says it as quickly as he can, and then yells, "You're fired."
But no, I don't think it will. The only other parallel I can draw is like the Resident Evil series, because they a couple of times. Like the prototype is leaked like years later, and you can see like the ideas that they took, and then what made it into the finished game. So, like Resident Evil 4 has a pretty crazy demo. It looks a lot more like Silent Hill than what Resident Evil 4 wound up looking like, and they took that and turned that into Devil May Cry. So, maybe what they had was actually a decent game, but it just wasn't
Metroid, and they might be keeping it for something else.
You
But
know,
they
like
seemed
it
pretty
didn't have that
disappointed.
Metroid flavor. So
Yeah.
that's why they went back to Retro, who invented that flavor. And I don't know. I don't foresee this happening a second time. And
I don't really either. I hope not.
if
At
there
least
was any possibility of that happening, do you think we would have gotten that
announcement that we got right now.
Because I guarantee the ink on that deal was dry before they announced it.
Oh, for sure. They're not gonna. Why would Nintendo's a very Nintendo's a very seasoned
doing this.
Yeah, Nintendo's a very seasoned company. They listen to the fans, but they don't publicly acknowledge the fact that they listen to the fans.
They sure don't, do they?
They don't. They want to. They try. They're like the wrestler that plays it off that everything that they've ever done was their idea and their idea alone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they do it just for us. But they do it just for us. So we'll keep buying their stuff because I mean, at the end of the day, they know who their audience is, and you can prove this not just in their software but in their hardware as well. Because Nintendo has never given a shit about how strong Microsoft or Sony's console is. They've always just done their own thing, and they've always been just fine for doing so. Even arguably with the debacle that was the Wii U, I mean, they technically still sold a decent number of units. It wasn't a huge financial success, but it wasn't a complete, an utter failure. They sold enough units to, push some games and build some new franchises. And if nothing else came out of the Wii U, they got two, I want to say two brand new hit, like, Smash like games that they now own. One of them existed before the Wii U, but they acquired the rights to it, and the other one was made from the ground up for the Wii U, which was Splatoon. So you got Splatoon and you got Bayonetta, which we now own for Nintendo. Is now a Nintendo owned game from I want to say Platinum. Yeah,
I'm excited for Bayonetta 3.
I am too.
Whenever that comes out, it's been a year almost since Bayonetta 2.
It's been a lot longer since. Supported. I was gonna say.
Since they reported
it's been a lot longer than a year.
Yeah, no, I know. But that was considered like this is just around the corner because they were priming people for this. So maybe with the Metroid thing they'll do something similar. And your rumors about the Prime collection. Will come out.
It was listed for sale on a site and then it was taken down. That's the proof that it exists. Like, that's all we have.
What site though?
It was a site it was like a big retailer in the UK somewhere that it was listed and then was forced taken down. So I don't remember exactly which one, but it wasn't anywhere in the US. It was somewhere overseas. But
probably somewhere that doesn't exist in the US anymore, like Babbage's.
Yeah, potentially. But the rumors are still there that it is out there, and I could see them wanting to draw interest back in the title before it comes out by releasing that like maybe a year. So maybe since we're not getting Metroid Prime 4 this year, we could get the trilogy at Christmas time.
The Samus Returns was supposed to be, because they announced them both at the same time, and it's like, oh, by the way, this one's coming out in 6 months. Or 3 months or something crazy like that.
Here's this. Yeah, I could see that because I remember seeing both those announcements and then seeing that there was a 2D Samus game for the Game Boy that was coming out like in a few months, and I literally ran out in the middle of the trailer like because I was done with an event at my radio station job, and I was watching E3 on my phone, and I saw the Metroid Prime 4 trailer while I was sitting there in the office, and I was like almost crying. I was so happy. And then I saw the Samus Returns one, and literally I didn't even go home. I just went to the GameStop that was by my house and just pre-ordered it that right then and there. So I didn't even wait like 2 hours. I went and pre-ordered it immediately. I was like, I know I want this. And
so
I wanted
you're a fan, is what you're saying.
Yes, I knew that. I was like, Nintendo's making Metroid games again. Holy shit, I got to jump on this.
Yeah, no, that was cool. The Prime 4 announcement was still really underwhelming in the fact that they only showed a logo, but
The fact that the logo was there with a 4 by it is what everybody was. I mean, you heard people like screaming about it.
yeah,
Though,
right,
like,
right. It wasn't like with the Final Fantasy VII remake where they'll show the logo and then people would lose their shit and they'd be like, "Oh, we're re-releasing this for mobile phones. It's not the remake."
Yeah, no, exactly. Or the
Wasn't that
horrible,
bad.
like, you see the Gears of War logo and then it's a fucking pop vinyl game. Ugh. But yeah, I think things are gonna be fine. We are gonna have to wait more, obviously. Now that's inherently what this means. But like what Miyamoto said and like what you said that he said, if it takes longer but it's better, it's worth it. That being said, 14 years is a really long time since since the last Metroid Prime game, and I hope
Yeah.
Nintendo knows that. And I don't count Prime Federation Force, but I mean that game wasn't great, but it also wasn't as bad as it gets a rap for being. But I'm ready to have a Prime game where Samus is the main character again. It's time, and also for you, because you had earlier in this podcast told me that you have not played Hunters. I urge you while we're waiting, if you find the time after you're done with Resident Evil 2 Remake, play Hunters all the way through, and then go and get the good ending, or go to YouTube and watch the good ending of 3 again, and you'll see why people are so excited.
What? How do you have to get the good ending? Is that like a percentage
You
thing,
have to
or-
find all the missile expansions and energy tank expansions. I think you have to
I
get all like
probably
the collection stuff. You could just watch it again on YouTube if you're not trying to do a completionist run of the game again, which I would honestly just say it's way quicker to just do that. You should actually just watch that immediately after you see the end of Hunters. And there's 2 endings of Hunters as well too, by the way.
Yeah, is that also tied to completion, or
No.
do you have to like speedrun it?
No, it's actually neither. It's a kind of a I don't know what the word is here. Like not a cheat. What's an Easter egg that you have to do during the final boss of Metroid Prime Hunters? There's some colored panels on the wall that correspond to weapons, and you have to shoot them in a certain order. And you'll know because they'll spin around and make a sound when you shoot them, and you don't have to start over ever. There's 6 weapons in the game, and there's 6 panels, and you have to shoot. I used to know the order by heart, but it's been so long I don't anymore. But if you shoot the panels in a certain order and they spin around, and then after the 6th one goes, you just beat the boss per normal, and then you get something at the end that I won't spoil what it is, but you'll see when you get there. I'm not gonna spoil one of my favorite games of all time for you. I just want you to play it.
All right. Yeah, it looks pretty cheap. I looked it up on eBay. It's like $15. And it's kind of surprising because like normally, those like really revered classic Nintendo games hold their value pretty well.
Well, it's funny too because Metroid Prime Hunters, there was a demo for the DS when the DS first launched of what Metroid Prime Hunters was supposed to be, and it was called Metroid First Hunt. And that a lot of the stuff that was in that demo made it into the final game actually, but with some slightly better controls. And some of the weapons, there was a weapon in the multiplayer of that game that got split into 2 different weapons for the actual release of the game. They had the Volt Driver and the Battle Hammer were kind of were kind of combined into the same weapon in the demo, and they called it the Electro Lob. And they changed that to be two separate weapons in the final game that handle very differently and have different effects and stuff like that. And that's another cool thing of Hunters is the multiplayer, which I will play with you at some point if we ever we need to get together soon, and I will play it with you to show you how groundbreaking it was for its time, considering this was 2004 and it's the most competent handheld shooter to ever be made at that time. So,
well, don't oversell it.
well, it did not get overtaken until Killzone Mercenaries on the Vita in 2013, I want to say.
Okay.
So,
So
it held that crown for a good 9 years
so we're
before it was
saying
challenged by anything worthwhile.
lineage here is like GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, Metroid Prime Hunters, Killzone. That's what we're going with.
Yeah. Well,
That's our official timeline.
well, no, in terms of handheld shooters, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying in terms of handheld shooters, it was the first non-shitty first-person handheld shooter that wasn't like a really old school basic style like port of like a game that had pre-existed like Doom or Duke Nukem. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that because that would have been a hard nut to crack with just the limited controls, and I could see how the stylus might kind of you could do something with that. So.
Most accurate aiming on a console. That's what Stylus did. Most accurate aiming on a console. And you know what else made Metroid so great? Is it kept a really good frame rate the entire time you played it. Kept a good consistent frame rate. It didn't have any screen tearing. Oh my god. It's a mess. It does not get the respect or recognition it deserves, in my opinion. People don't talk about that game enough, in all honesty,
you're right,
especially not
they
the
don't,
Metroid community.
And I completely even forgot that it existed until you mentioned it. That's just kind of the embarrassment of riches because the DS had one of the greatest
best libraries of all
games.
Time. Arguably, since the Super Nintendo, the best one.
And yeah, the Super Nintendo's up there, where it's like if you could pick one system library to launch into space for other civilizations to see what video games are. It would be hard not to pick
Super Nintendo would be a very good choice. I agree. I 110% agree. And but yeah, basically my going forward for this is we're gonna get the first portable Metroid we've had that's gonna be amazing since Hunters. When it comes out, if it's as good as they're selling it to us that they're gonna try and make it be. We're gonna get the first Metroid Prime game in over 10 years, maybe even 15. I hope it doesn't come to that, but maybe even in 15 years.
My only fear with that is that, because I doubt a lot of the same people, and I'm just totally spitballing here. I have no idea because I haven't looked into it, but I kind of doubt most of the people that worked on the Prime series are still at Retro Studios.
Oh, there's no way in hell. It's 10 years.
not that they're a bad studio these days. It's not like what happened with Rare.
No, oh God, that's a horror story.
But I don't want to see them make it stupidly difficult like they did with the Donkey Kong games, because that's my kind of nitpick with or pet peeve, whatever you want to call it, about the Donkey Kong Country Returns games. Like I love those games; they're beautiful, but like
I'm sure they're going to study their past.
Country wasn't known for its stupid difficulty. It was known for its creativity.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to study their past games though before they sit down to put this out. I'd like to think that if they're trying to recapture the spirit of what makes Metroid Prime, the first place they're going to look is GameCube Metroid Prime 1, Echoes, and then Corruption.
They would have to, just by virtue of the fact that it's Metroid Prime 4, not a total reboot like with the Donkey Kong games.
Yeah, and I think they can do it right. Crossed. I think they can do it right.
What's the spread on this? What's the Vegas odds? You're saying 2021?
2021 is when I think we're going to see Metroid Prime 4. I'm saying at the earliest 2021. Let me rephrase that. If they're fixing what's there and not starting from square one, which has me nervous, I would say end of 2020. If they're scrapping what's there and they're starting from square one, if they are doing it, I'd say 2021, early 2022. It's not going to be quite at the 15-year mark, but it's going to come damn close.
Well, and even if it wasn't, like, they might hold it back a little bit just for the timing. When did the original Prime come out? Was that a spring title?
I want to say it was. I'd have to look.
Because I feel like
unfortunately
some of them came out in the fall.
As huge of a fan of the Metroid series as I am, I did not jump on very early at all whatsoever. I did not jump onto the Metroid train until Metroid Prime 3. And I'd
Wow.
actually been gifted Echoes by a friend, and I liked the multiplayer and played the multiplayer, but I didn't really play the story all that much because it was a little bit above my peanut-sized brain pay grade at the time. But when I actually went back to play these games for what they are and enjoy them, I realized, holy shit, I have been sleeping. I have been sleeping on my favorite franchise. The best way I can describe to you, Brian, is remember how I talked to you when I discovered Metal Gear, basically,
Oh yeah.
like how excited I was about it. That was how I felt
Uh-huh.
about Metroid. Like
Yeah, it's like
that's the only other series that has made me feel as passionate about it as like Metal Gear has. So it's like I hold that up there. Those are like both of my top three of franchises of all time. Except Metroid just kind of had a quiet like sleep, whereas Metal Gear had a bullet to the back of its head with five. Um,
well, yeah, the less said about that, the better.
yeah, I
Um,
did end up getting. I did end up getting.
you know what though? On the bright side, it's not Kid Icarus.
Yeah, I did end up getting. I did end up getting the GameCube one though, by the way, and I'm gonna record that for our other recorded thing to get footage for it. I decided against streaming it. I'm just gonna record that as the gameplay for the other podcast that we did.
Oh, cool.
I was still. I know I'm undeniably late in getting that out, but I wanted to do something with original Metroid Prime or not Metroid. I wanted to do something with original Metal Gear for that, and I have been. I was trying to shop around and see if I could get a better deal on it, but eventually I just caved and bought it for what the people were asking for it. A slightly not as good copy as I'd like to own, but it's playable.
What are they asking? Like $50 or something?
55 to 60, and the label on disc 1 is cracked as shit on the copy that I have. But the game still plays just fine. It's just the top label. And it's like an ugly gray sticker basically. So it's not even like anything, that really actually fucking matters. It's just something I'm a nitpick about.
It, it's a it's my favorite. Like when I think about replaying Metal Gear Solid, it's always a toss up between Twin Snakes and the original game, and I prefer them both for vastly different reasons.
I'd say
So
Twin Snakes is feeling harder so
we'll
far.
just have to put a pin in that until you
Yeah.
finish that, and we'll circle
So
back to that one.
OG Metroid Prime was November 17th of 2002 for North America. Japan, amazingly enough, did not get this game until February 28th of 2003. So this is actually one of the first times that North America actually got a game before the rest of the world for a Nintendo console. Because this was back when there would be months in between release dates from one place to another. Now everybody kind of gets the games all within a week of each other. But this is back when it was still
Yeah,
regular to see like half a year go by before the rest of the world would get a game.
that's been a nice byproduct of the internet. Is so spoilers don't get out there. That everybody like the world tends to get the game
Pretty close together.
pretty close together. Yeah.
And that's even better for the communities, I would say, because everybody's talking about it at the same time. And if it's anything competitive, you all have the chance to hone your skills at the same time when everybody's still a noob. You don't have these people, you don't hit the online like we did with Max Anarchy Reigns, where the other half of the world had it for a full like 2 months before we did, and then we just got shit on online. So there was like no reason to even play the game online if you were a North American player who didn't have a way to play it before. But I think the takeaway from all of what we've talked about today with Metroid is I think things will be better. We're not seeing it for at least 2 years, most likely. And
I'm gonna say fall 2020,
fall
just to
2020.
be different. I think you're probably right about spring 2021, but I'll say fall 2020. What the hell?
But well, I think it'll be ready by spring 2021. I don't think it'll release then because if you look at how big of a game this is shaping up to be, this is definitely a knockout for the Christmas season, if you ask me. And that's also one of the reasons I think it got delayed, because there was speculation on the internet if the new Pokemon game was going to be delayed, because they'd been very quiet about it, and they've also been very quiet about Metroid. I think now that we've seen that Metroid is in fact getting delayed, I think the new Pokemon game will be the Christmas game for Switch this year. Hopefully we get more information about Metroid Prime at E3, but I'm not going to hold my breath. We've got Yoshi coming out in a
Yeah,
couple
it'd
of
be
months.
way too early.
Yeah, we've got
It'd be
Yoshi
way too
coming out in a
early.
couple of months. We've
And
got probably going to get
and
some
they've still got Luigi's Mansion 3 to
Animal
push out.
Crossing on the Switch is purportedly supposed to come out this year. Because even without Metroid Prime 4 coming out this year on the Switch, Nintendo's got an insane year of exclusives planned for the Switch already. Like we've got like 4 or 5 games. Well, maybe now it's down to 4 or 3, um, but these are like big budget titles. Like we're getting the new Luigi's Mansion supposedly. We're getting the new Animal Crossing supposedly. We're getting a whole bunch of we're getting a new Pokemon game supposedly. We're getting a new Yoshi game. We're getting a whole bunch of downloadable content to pre-existing titles. We're getting a whole bunch
Bayonetta
of
3
support.
maybe.
Bayonetta 3 potentially. I would expect to hear news of Bayonetta 3 by E3, or an update at least. Maybe not a release date, but at least some footage or something. Maybe an announcement talking about the development. Hell, maybe they ran into a roadblock like they did with Metroid. But only time will tell with that. Travis Strikes Again just came out. That's a No More Heroes, another game in the No More Heroes franchise. This one's not a main entry. It's kind of a spin-off sort of thing, from my understanding, and it's not been getting great reviews either. But I think they told Suda51 they wanted to see how this game would sell before they went ahead and greenlit No More Heroes 3.
Well, even the original one had kind of weird reviews. Like everyone just really liked the concept, and
they liked the combat, but they had the really fun time shitting on the open world aspect of it because it was very bare bones.
Right.
Which
so I mean
they took that and they took that
yeah.
out, but they took that out in 2, and 2 was just fine. They had all the stuff that made 1 great in 2, minus the shitty driving to and from things with nothing to do while you were driving. So they literally just turned it into a menu. Pick your level and fight your boss. Like they could just do something that similar, and then they wouldn't have to waste all that time in coding open world mechanics and all that other stuff. Like just save your time and focus on where it matters. So what do you think? How impactful do you think the second coming of Metroid Prime is going to be? Or I want to say second because I consider the first coming of Metroid Prime all those 4 games all together because it came out really fast. But the second coming, this is for a new generation.
I think it'll start things up again. I think it'll be the start of a new trilogy. I don't think they would just dangle Metroid Prime 4 in front of us if they were just going to put out one game and then wait 15 years before putting out the next one. Yeah. So I think, it's ready to kind of see the light of day again, at least as far as their plan goes. Because like Mario never goes away, Zelda never goes away for whatever reason. They kind of keep Metroid on the back burner. But I think it'll be the start of a new trilogy.
Do you think it might bring a resurgence in Metroid altogether in terms of Nintendo wanting to make more titles more quickly?
I guess that depends on how well it sells, how many Switches it moves. Isn't that the ultimate metric of most of these things?
Of how many consoles does your game sell? Yeah, I would say so. It's going to be pretty hard to recapitalize after what
back
Smash Brothers.
Wasn't there that kind of their intention with bringing back Kid Icarus as a 3DS launch title?
Yeah, and it worked. It worked pretty well. Sold a lot of 3DSs. They ended up having to cut the price though, because people were complaining the price that they were asking for a 3DS for what it could do was pretty outrageous. I think they were charging what they charged for the Wii at launch for the 3DS when it came out. I think they were charging $250 for the standard 3DS model, not the XL, for the standard 3DS. So
I thought it wasn't selling that great in the beginning because they did a whole thing with like the ambassador program.
Yeah, well, that was the price point. But I mean, the people who wanted Icarus got it immediately, regardless. And I'm the only one of my friends who did not get a 3DS at launch. I did not get mine until 2012. In February of 2012, I want to say, is when I bought my 3DS.
And I didn't buy mine until they came out with the new 3DS.
And that was another thing too. Once I saw I didn't even see it at E3. They didn't even talk about a Samus themed a new 3DS XL. But when my friend told me that, I canceled one of my other games that I was pre-ordering to save money for that new 3DS and gave my girlfriend my old one and bought that one for myself. Because I want to like, Whenever Nintendo makes something Metroid, I want to like pat them on the back and be like, yes, this is an okay thing to do. You want to keep doing this. This is a good business decision. It's like, good boy, here's a bone.
Right.
But I'm hoping we're gonna get another. I'm hoping we're gonna get another. Generation of kids that's gonna grow up with Metroid games. Honestly, because it's been gone for such a long time. It feels like even though there's been 3DS games, I guess it's just not the same as the first-person open-world large labyrinths of random places, these eerie environments, these creepy-looking creatures that are rendered in 3D in front of you. The only thing
I don't know. Maybe that's part of the reason why it goes so long between games. I mean, you mentioned that Nintendo hates Metroid fans, but and that they don't do things implicitly for fans. They do. They just don't tell you that they do. I've always kind of felt that way as an adult Nintendo fan. Like they're actually a really hard company
to be
behind because they don't care about the older users. So I wonder if that's the parallel there, that like they only do Metroid for the older people because it doesn't really click with the younger generation for whatever reason.
But I'm of the opinion if Zelda can click, then Metroid can click, because inherently they're the same.
But they got to have a new game to make that breakthrough.
Yeah.
So hopefully Prime 4 is that breakthrough, and it kind of changes the
stigma,
the dynamic a little bit.
I hope this game is the one that kills the Metroid curse. I hope this game is what feeds it to a new generation, and it's. I mean, I know it's never going to happen. I would like to see at some point in time. I'd like to see Metroid games become the new Mario of the system, or become the new Zelda of the system. I'm never going to see that ever, and I know it's foolish to think that I will.
But how great would that be, right? Because like you'd have your Metroid Prime games, which are in 3D, and then you'd have like
your 2D Metroid games on your portable
Super
console.
Metroid U, where you get to have your 2D old school style, when like the two things exist in parallel. That'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, and I even commend Other M for trying to put 2 and 1 together, even though the 3D was very half-assed kind of. But I would be okay with them trying that again if they did it in a way that worked. That being said, that's not what I want for Prime. I guess where I'm at is I want this to be great. I think it's going to be great. I really hope it's going to be great. And we just won't know until we play it. What is it? What do you feel like your takeaway is?
And I think it'll be interesting to see what they do, if anything, with the Switch controls, because as much as I love the Switch, it's a little disappointing that
playing shit with the Joy-Cons.
They're not. I don't know if they're utilizing those controllers in the best way that's possible. But then you get situations like Mario Party where you can only play it with the motion controls,
and it works just fine.
So like, but that impacts the portability of it, because if you're trying to play it on the road and you can't set it up with the kickstand, then you kind of can't play it portable. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the controls on that one.
I think Nintendo is still looking at the Switch as a home console primarily, and portable as a secondary, because they're still providing support for the 3DS.
Which I love.
I do too, and a lot of people say they want the 3DS to die so that they can focus on the Switch. And
why?
Exactly, that's where I'm at. I mean, I understand the 3DS's hardware is a fossil at this point, but it's. I mean, why more of a? There's no such thing as too much of a great thing. You know what I mean?
I like the 3D too. It's always disappointing when they come out with a game like Mario Maker where they port it and they don't do anything with the 3D. But then again, I like I said, I didn't buy it until it was the new 3DS and it had the super stable 3D, which always works. So
yeah, and a lot of people forego the 3D in order to get better battery life out of the console too. I myself am one of those people. I generally keep it off. Every once in a while, like while I'm playing something, I'll turn it on for maybe 20 minutes and be like, yeah. And I'll just go back to turning it off to save battery power.
See, I've never been in that position, just because I never needed the thing to go more than 4 or 5 hours on a single charge.
Yeah.
Whereas the 3D, even with your 3D on, it still gets better battery life than the Switch does.
Oh, well, yeah, I actually had to buy a charging stand for my Switch to play it where I
So
play it, so I bought a little, like,
it isn't there a scuttlebutt that they're going to come out with a newer
Switch. Yeah.
model of the Switch?
There's rumors that we're getting a hardware revision to the Switch, and I don't know if that's going to be in terms of battery life. I've also heard the rumors that they're making a version of the Switch that's not going to work in a dock. It's just going to be a portable Switch only. And I think that is a horrible idea. Why would you take away the dock functionality of the Switch?
Well, then it's not a Switch.
Exactly. It's a brand new fucking console at that point.
You literally can't switch. It's not a Switch anymore.
It's a Nintendo stay. Or a Nintendo I don't even know what you'd call that. A Nintendo lie.
It'd be the 2DS all over again.
Yeah. And I'm also kind of sad to see with the direction the Switch is going that this is the end of the DS era. Kind of it's signifying the relinquishing of that second screen and we're back to just one again. I did enjoy the 2 screen times that we've had with DS, the Wii U, and the 3DS. I'd like to see that come back at some point, I guess. Once they figure it out, if that makes any sense. Once they really get it, get all the kinks ironed out of multiple screens and consoles at the same time, which is I think why they went with. I like that the Switch is what it is. I'm not knocking it. Don't get me wrong. I want that I want all those games that we never got on the Wii U to be made. That's basically where I'm at with this. Because the Wii U was just a super powered 3DS, basically, if you think about it. Your TV was a top screen, your gamepad was a bottom
I never
screen.
thought about it that way. Nintendo's always been really forward thinking with their systems in general, whereas like, if you contrast that with something like Microsoft does with the Xbox, it's just like as long as we have this big monstrous controller with offset joysticks, that's all people care about.
And power.
Yeah.
They're both obsessed. Sony and Microsoft are both obsessed with the same thing. We need more power. We need whatever we need. We want it bigger, faster, and flashier. Like that's what Sony and Microsoft are at each other's throats about constantly. Microsoft just dumps Halo, Forza, and Gears into their fans' mouths, and Sony never admits that they do anything wrong, and they just power through every obstacle. So you got 2 very different companies trying to capture the same market.
And yet Nintendo just always does weird things and takes chances, and I love that. Like even that stupid N64 controller that's really unwieldy, and
The Trident.
like I still love the Trident because it felt good at the time, And if you try and map any N6 like using totally legit means to play N64 games, you can't.
You can't
Recreate
happily
that
map a
controller.
controller because there's 6 buttons on the face. You know what? I actually thought of a controller that you might be able to map an N64 thing onto and have it work somewhat okay.
A USB N64 controller?
Well,
Because that's what I bought.
I was gonna say the Duke.
The what?
The Duke. Think about it.
Yeah, I'll
got
have to look that up.
The original Xbox controller. You have the main problem that people run into with mapping N64 stuff is 6 face buttons. Most controllers only have 4 face buttons. The Duke had 6 because it had white, black, and then ABXY. And then it only had 2 triggers, but that's fine because so did the N64. You could put Z on the right stick for clicking it if you'd want to, and then the D-pad could be the D-pad and the left stick could be the left stick.
So you just wouldn't have a start button, like a legit start button.
No, you have a start button on the Duke. You still have you have start and back on the Duke as well. You could put it
but
on
if you're
start.
using the 6 face buttons,
No,
you wouldn't be able to map start from N64.
No, you could because there's more than.
Because you'd have A, B. And...
I'm not counting the menu buttons as space buttons.
Okay, all right.
So there's technically 8 if I'm counting those. Because you had white and black was like beneath A and B on like a modern Xbox controller.
It'd be an interesting experiment.
That other than using a real N64 controller, that's the closest controller in my brain that I would attempt it with.
You're probably right, or one of these weird PC hybrid things.
Controllers, yeah, because else you're using A, B, X, Y as the C buttons, and you're mapping A and B onto bumpers, or R1 and R2. That would be like the next easiest way to do it, but it's still going to be weird pressing bumpers for like your primary buttons on a console. So it's, you know, or
Yeah.
you can map A B as the X Y, or you can map the A B and like square and triangle or square and cross, and then map L and R as like triangle and circle, and then have the C buttons be on the L1, L2, R1, R2. But again, if you're playing a game where you use the C buttons to move, like that's gonna be weird. So there's no right answer for N64 on the computer, other than what you said. Get an N64 USB controller. But I think Metroid's gonna be fine. It's sad that we have to wait, but that's the hand that we've been dealt. So
Yeah, we waited this long. We can wait a little longer.
exactly, we've waited 12 years. What's two more?
Yeah, right. It's not gonna be like the Resident Evil 2 remake.
I just hope,
20 years.
I just hope it doesn't. I'm just hoping it doesn't bomb, and I don't think it will.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
All right, well that's pretty much
In
all
good
I got.
hands.
That's pretty much all I got. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Once again, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at BombasticENT, Instagram Bombastic Entertainment, and my YouTube channel is Bombastic Entertainment. So the word is Bombastic Entertainment.
Check out Brian, guys. He's got a lot of cool stuff. Thanks for listening.